Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, I interviewed an author of multiple nonfiction books who is now writing a fantasy novel series. Her name is Aurora Winter, and here's my interview with Aurora. Aurora Winter, welcome to Apollo Papyrus.
Great to be on the show with you.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
I'm an award-winning, best-selling author of about half a dozen books. I've published nonfiction books, including Turn Words into Wealth, Blueprint for Your Business, Brand, and Book. And my new fantasy trilogy is called Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse for those YA fantasy lovers out there. And it's going to be launched on Kickstarter, or book number 2 will be launched on Kickstarter. It won the Reader's Choice Award, Best Book for Teens. I'm super stoked about that. And the nonfiction book I mentioned, Turn Words into Wealth, won Outstanding Nonfiction Book of the Year in 2021. So that was something to celebrate as well.
I'll start with your nonfiction books, which include Turn Words into Wealth, Thought Leader Lunch, and Marketing Fast Track. Without spoiling too much of any of your nonfiction books, what are each of them about?
Well, I was really excited to help people publish their books. I have a company called Same Page Publishing. We focus on books that are worth talking about and that are award worthy. And one thing that was really heavy on my heart was that most great writers don't have a clue about marketing and they don't really know how to monetize their books. So in those 3 books, Marketing Fast Track, Thought Leader Launch, and Turn Words into Wealth, I help people to monetize their message and monetize their books and build a business. So Marketing Fast Track is an example of how you can create a quick book in a weekend and actually use it to build your business. Marketing Fast Track was based upon a 1-hour interview. Somebody interviewed me. I liked the interview. I thought, oh, this could make a quick little book. And I used that book to launch a new business or to pivot my business. And it generated $250,000 in 90 days. That little book is a gift to the listeners. It's available free wherever books are sold. And it's just called Marketing Fast Track, the little book that launched a new business, $250,000 in 90 days. The other 2 books, Thought Leader Launch and Turn Words into Wealth that you mentioned, are much longer and took much more than a weekend to create. But they basically, both of them help explain how to make 7 figures with your $1 million message. So it helps to look at all the different ways to monetize a book. If you are an author of fantasy, maybe you don't have a business, but still, for example, I helped one of my authors came to me with a book called It Must Be Autumn, a kid's book, made a beautiful award-winning kids book. And I'm like, well, what about the other 3 seasons? So now she's got 4 books instead of 1. Another author came to me with a lovely kids book called Where's My Joey? I'm like, well, maybe translations, and what about a workbook? And that author now has got a coloring book, a workbook. That first book has been in multiple languages, French, Italian, German, and now she's written the second book, Where's My Monster? So think more than 1 book and think how you can build your business. For example, another client I'm helped with a book called Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer. I know most people won't be able to see it, but you can see it here, Aaron. And it was inspired by a true story. And it's got over 2,000 reviews on Amazon. And now we're writing 9 books. If you're writing 9 or 10 books, or at least 3 books, you may have, something going there. And with Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse, BBC said they're interested in a 12-part TV series. So the book Turn Words into Wealth and also Thought Leader Launch encourage people to think, what other monetization, tripping over that word, is possible? Can you speak? Can you host workshops? Can you train? Can it be a TV, movie, or series? Or can you create other products?
Before I ask you the next question, I will note that the Michael Stockman book you referenced, I'll include a link to it in the text description of this episode once it's uploaded, because this is an audio-only podcast, and our listeners couldn't actually see the book you held up to the camera. But my next question is, how did your work as a serial entrepreneur influence your nonfiction writing?
Oh, it's all based on my background as a serial entrepreneur. I mean, one of the things I love to share on podcasts is this idea about the magic of pivoting. So as I looked at my life, every year, every decade, I've done something new. In my 20s, I started a business. I sold my first business in my 20s. I started a second business in my 20s. I sold that at the very end of the 20s. In the 30s, I started a business in film and television, raised 5 million, went on to make 8 films. And then I started yet another business in a different industry, training coaches. And I don't know, I went to Italy and got my MBA when I turned 50. So I'm an example of somebody who's always reinventing themselves. And I do that usually by launching a business. And usually that business is solving a problem for other people that I have just solved for myself. And so in the books that I write to encourage people to build businesses, I share stories of the businesses and how they became successful and how others can do the same. And one of the things I love about being an author and a communicator is as I look over my life, and I've certainly had many stumbles as well as many successes, it was every single time words that generated the revenue. So learning how to be a good communicator with the authors that listen to this podcast are very likely very good wordsmiths. This can be the ticket to building a business. So I invite people to lean into the neuroscience of communication. I talk about that a lot in the book, Turn Words into Wealth, and Thought Leader Launch to understand communication, which many writers know how to do, although oftentimes they don't speak up. But let me give you a more specific example rather than having generalities. My first business was launched by answering the question, what business can my husband and I start with no money? Because we had no money. So we launched a yacht charter or yacht rental business that quickly grew to a 6-figure business. And then I looked around and saw there were real estate tax shelters available in Canada. So I asked the question, I wonder if we could do this with boats. And after spending $20,000 with lawyers and accountants, found out, yes, we could offer tax benefits with boats. And that enabled our company to grow to a 7-figure business with the with the television and film production company that I started with a business partner in London, England. That was answering the question, I wonder if we can access grants and tax credits and Canadian tax shelter benefits. And the answer was yes. And that led to $5 million and 8 films being produced. So every time as I'm solving problems for myself and launching a business, and then the books will often point ways that people can use that same approach for their own life and their own business.
You've written a fantasy novel, which is the first in a planned 3 volume series titled Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse. Without spoiling too much of your fantasy series, what is the series as a whole about, and what is or will each book be in the series be about?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm super excited about magic, mystery, and the multiverse. And it's another example of the magic of pivoting. So when COVID hit, I was like, okay, I've been thinking about writing these fantasy series since I was 9 years old. If not now, when? And so I decided I was going to give myself permission to write the fantasy series. And it's about a girl named Anna. She's based in Los Angeles. She's a wannabe actress. She and her younger brother go on a whole adventure through the multiverse. They start off in London, staying with their uncle, who is a mad genius, think Back to the Future kind of Christopher Lloyd character. And he says, well, you can have the run of the house while I'm away. Just stay away from the experimental car. Of course, being teenagers, they go in the experimental car, which turns out to be a parallel universe port, or a pup, as I call it for fun in the book. And then they go on a whole adventure in the multiverse, landing in a complete other planet, which is suffering under a tyrant's rule. And Anna and her younger brother, Zachary, are the ones who can either save this planet or turn their back on it, and they will probably perish along with the inhabitants of the planet. So it's a fun, fast-paced fantasy action adventure. It's, as I said, it won the Reader's Choice Award, Best Book for Teens. It also won the American Fiction Award, Best Preteen Book, and it's won several other book awards from Literary Titan, Pinnacle Book Awards, that kind of thing. The first book in the series is available wherever books are sold, so people can get it on Amazon. But what I'd really love people to do is check out the website, Magic Mystery and the Multiverse.com. It's got the reviews from Kirkus. It's got the links to get the book on Amazon, but most of all, it's got the link to follow on Kickstarter. So if you're interested in following books on Kickstarter, I would love people to follow and just see what happens with it. I'm going to launch book number 2 and book number 3, which have both been written if you're worried about starting a trilogy that hasn't been finished. But I decided to launch the next books on Kickstarter. And the reason being that on Kickstarter, it gives a platform for authors to offer extra things. Like I've had beautiful artwork created. People can get the digital artwork. Through Kickstarter, you can create much nicer versions of your book or offer extra things like illustrated maps, this kind of thing that are not easy to offer on Amazon. And the best part is through Kickstarter, the authors get to develop a relationship with their fans and their readers. So check it out, Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse on Kickstarter.
What was the hardest part of transitioning from writing nonfiction to writing fiction?
Oh my gosh, it was really quite hard. It's a whole different thing. Even though I've got a background in film and TV, so I'm used to thinking about dramatic stories and helping create dramatic stories. It had been a while, and I'd been writing nonfiction, which is much more cerebral and linear and logical. Whereas with the fiction books, with the fantasy book, Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse, the next one's called, by the way, the next one's called The Secret Multiverse Academy. And then the third one is called The Deadly Asphyxiator. It's much more a process of, okay, laying down some mysteries, laying down some secrets, keeping dramatic tension, having it, the story go up and down like a roller coaster where you've got, something positive happening, something negative happening, something positive happening, and the whole 3-act story structure, or the hero's journey story structure. So I had a lot of fun with it. But I must confess that I think I have done at least 10 drafts of this book, way more work for me writing my first fantasy book that was published compared to writing a nonfiction, which, yes, I still do multiple drafts of a nonfiction, but much more straightforward for me at this point after having written half a dozen or so nonfiction books. I'm also a ghostwriter, so I don't count those, but those add up to the extra word count.
Now, people might associate works of fiction influencing reality more with literary fiction than genre fiction. But how can works of fiction, even genre fiction, influence reality?
Oh, I'm so glad that you're asking that question. I'm really excited about the possibility of influencing reality with fiction. I think most people are tired of being preached to or lectured at. So, but a lot of people really enjoy entertainment. So my goal with Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse was for it to be fun, entertaining, engaging, a real ride that's enjoyable. But hidden underneath that are a couple of themes that really matter to me. One is around free speech. So the evil people in Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse are actually censors, as in censorship. So the people are being censored. And I think books like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 illustrate the power of fiction to actually influence how people think about things. And I was just, or I am just devastated by the cancel culture that we're living through right now. And so I wanted to use this young adult fantasy book as a vehicle to invite kids and their parents and teachers to think about and talk about the value of free speech. In my opinion, the way that we figure things out is by talking it out. I mean, I don't know about how you are with your writing process, but I never just write the final draft. I have to talk it out and write it out and review it. And eventually the idea gets clear through that process. So I really wanted to use my fantasy book to help people consider and discuss their own point of view about free speech. I think free speech is really important. And a couple of other issues are the love and loyalty of siblings. So the brother-sister duo in the Magic Mystery and the Multiverse, they are annoyed with each other, but they're also loyal. And then the third issue that I wanted to shine a light on, because I think it's super important, is the environment, and very specifically, the importance of oxygen. I think we all take oxygen for granted, but I've lived in places that have really clean air, like Squamish, British Columbia, where the air is pristine, and places like Los Angeles, where the air is not so pristine. And our air really matters, even though we take it for granted. So I'm shining a light on that issue as well. And that kind of came because I had asthma as a kid and I was hospitalized several times because I couldn't breathe. So I really do have, deeply ingrained in the very cells of my body, the importance of oxygen. So my hope is that, Magic Mystery and the Multiverse will shine a light on real world issues that matter right now, from the cancel culture to the environment to the love and loyalty between family members, which I think matters all the time.
Are all your books self-published? Are all your books traditionally published? Are all your books published via a hybrid press? Or did you use different publishing methods for your books?
That's a great question. I am the founder of Same Page Publishing, which is a boutique publishing company that, as I said, focuses on publishing books worth talking about, both fiction and nonfiction. So it's an independent boutique publishing company. You could say it's self-published or independently published. In my book, Turn Words into Wealth, I talk at length. I'm really passionate about the value of independent publishing or self-publishing. And as somebody who's an entrepreneur, I really don't see why anybody would give away the royalties or the value of their book and leave the marketing up to other people who don't have such a big stake in it. One of the stories I like to share is the author, well, he had it ghost written, so it was his stories, but David Goggins, who wrote the book Can't Hurt Me, he was told by a New York agent that, well, if he self-published his book, he'd be lucky if it sold 5,000 copies. Well, he's gone on to sell millions of copies. He's probably made $20 million or so from his independently published book. And if he had gone with a publisher, who knows if he would have achieved those kind of sales, because David Goggins himself drove the sales, doing what I'm doing right now, talking on podcasts. He went on a lot of podcasts and he sold, I think, 1 million copies of his book and maybe 600,000 copies of his audiobook, generating about $20 million. So I think that in 2024, now is the time to independently publish. And I encourage people to do so, because it's the most profitable, and also you can retain control. And for example, you can continue to update your book and improve it. I've added things to Magic Mystery and the Multiverse since it was published in August of 2023. I've added maps, I've added discussion questions with the author. I've had the chance to update the book as it won additional awards. So I'm a big fan of self-publishing or independent publishing. I don't know, do you want to share your experience with your own books about that?
Um, my first book back in 2019, I was not in a good state of mind, and I managed to self-publish it through Publish Drive, which was an ebook only publishing distributor at that time. But now they have print service. But I'm not going to use Publish Drive for my upcoming books that I'm going to start writing on later this year, and probably have some books published either very late this year or next year, because Publish Drive has a rather unusual pricing model, in that if you have more than one book uploaded through them, you have to pay a monthly fee or something to keep the books on either the digital or physical shelves.
Oh, I see.
Which in Publish Drive is very unusual in that regard.
Yeah, that does sound a bit unusual. Have you checked out Draft to Digital?
Oh yeah, that's probably what I'm going to use for my upcoming books, because they use Ingram Sparks printers for the print versions of their books, but they have better customer service for independent authors going the distributor route.
I confess that I upload my books to each platform independently, which is a bit time consuming, especially as I like to add things to my book, like the new maps or the discussion questions. But I upload to Ingram Sparks, Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, and so on manually. But it is amazing what can be done nowadays with publishing, and it's wonderful.
Now, you created the spoken author method. How does that work, and how can it help authors write books?
I love the spoken author method. So basically, I outline exactly what that is in the book Turn Words into Wealth. But I find that most leaders, business owners, and experts can talk about what they do, but they can't necessarily write. A lot of people freeze, when they see the blank page. So what I do with my clients is they come to me with an idea for a book. We brainstorm the book, we brainstorm the title, we brainstorm what the chapters are. And then once we've outlined, I don't know, say a dozen chapters, I basically interview them on a podcast episode. So every chapter of the book is like a conversation, like the conversation that we're having right now, Aaron. But we will know, okay, this chapter is going to be about longevity, say, and this other chapter is going to be about nutrition. So they'll know in advance approximately what the questions are, and they can prepare the stories and the statistics. And so then by the end of the process, not only do they get a book, the transcripts from the podcast become the messy first draft, which need to be tidied up a lot, but they also get all this audio and video footage so that when their book is about to launch, or even before that, they can slice and dice the audios and the videos and create a lot of content on social media. Most of my clients are business owners, so they have a business that they are promoting with their book, like they might be a chiropractor or a dentist or a doctor, or they have another kind of business. So they're typically nonfiction books, except that book I held up for you previously, Confessions of an Accidental Lawyer, is written by a lawyer, but we're working on making him the next John Grisham. So that book is, although we initially created it by talking it out, it's not a lead magnet for his litigation attorney business. It's a lead magnet for his other 9 books. We were working on the Jake Fox series of legal thrillers, so that'll be fun. Did that answer the question? I kind of meandered
Yes,
around
it
there.
did. Now, I'm going to ask you a question about cancel culture since you brought that up and is sort of a theme in your fantasy series. Now, I can understand instances of people being unfairly shunned from society for doing heinous or extremely offensive things, but do you think there should be a societal consequence for people doing uh, incredibly offensive or hurtful things?
I think that, I had a discussion with a lawyer recently about this, not Michael Stockham, a different lawyer. And those heinous things, horrible things, are already covered by law. And there already are consequences for slander, for libel, and for any kind of verbal assault. There already are legal consequences. But one thing that really shocked me during COVID, I wonder what you thought, Aaron, with the people who were genuinely struggling with what is this, what does COVID mean? How can we be healthy? And people who were expressing their honest opinion that, oh, why not take vitamin D? Or why not take other kinds of supplements were being shut down, and their Facebook or their YouTube or their Instagram was being shut down merely because they were suggesting that maybe the medical point of view didn't have all the answers. And if you remember I know COVID seems like it's so long ago, it's only 2020, a lot of people who got canceled, then later, oh, the science actually proved that the point of view that they were struggling with or presenting for people to consider was actually right. So we're jumping the gun in many cases, people are losing their livelihoods. They're losing their Facebook followers, their Instagram followers, their YouTube followers. People can have their whole business shut down. And even, I don't know, it was tragic to see doctors and nurses losing their livelihood just because they had a different point of view backed by different science than the government. What do you think?
You bring up an interesting point. Now, social media companies, in my opinion, they are free to set whatever rules they want for using the platform, but they should be applied consistently to everyone.
Yeah.
Now, regarding some of the COVID, uh, now I have an autism spectrum disorder, and I really get offended by people who falsely claim that vaccines cause autism. That's been disproven. In fact, there was a doctor in Britain many years ago who lost his medical license
Mm-hmm.
for spreading such blatant falsehoods in an official capacity. I mean, there's a fine line between criticizing medicine and peddling junk science. And
True.
criticizing medicine, as long as you don't go as far as like peddling junk science, I don't have a problem with that. But once you start peddling absolute junks, that's something that I don't have any tolerance for. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'm an author and a creator. I'm not a politician. So I'm not here to tell anybody what to think, but want to encourage people to talk about it and to think about it and to get more discernment around it because you're right. There's so many things to consider, but I think we've gone too far. Let the pendulum swing too far one way where many people are afraid to just speak up with ordinary everyday opinions. And I think that's tragic.
And I'll just make one more political comment before I go into my last question, and that is I am strongly against book bans by anyone for any reason.
Amen. I agree. Down with book bans.
My final question is what are your thoughts about the rise of artificial intelligence? I understand it's kind of an open ended question.
Oh, yeah, that's a hot topic. You're opening up a good question there. Well, I have oscillated between being completely terrified and being excited. And even on the same day, I might go between terrified and excited. I think that AI is opening up perhaps ways that we can leverage what we're up to and take away some of the onerous grunt work, like writing marketing copy or analyzing something. Perhaps like even this morning, I am polishing up book number 2 in Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse series. The second book's called The Secret Multiverse Academy, and I ran the manuscript through a site called authors.ai. And what it does is like the manuscript's like 90,000 words, something like that. So it would take me more than 5 minutes to analyze the structure for where's the highs and lows, where's the pacing slow, how are the characters dialogue distinct, and in 5 minutes or even less, if you go to authors.ai and you upload a manuscript, it came back and it showed me, this part of it is really working well. You've got the highs and lows, the dramatic tension and suspense. It's going really well. But in this part, to have a best-selling book, you really want to have a high and a low about every 10% of the book. So I had that working quite well, except, it was going at 10% and then it was going at 19% and then it was 19% and then 25%. So that was a little close. So I could see, I could add more content there. And then maybe the next one was, 17% of the book instead of 10%. So it helps at a glance to go, it's just AI. I have to be careful that it's not the gospel. It's not like me reading it or an editor reading it, but also it happened in 5 minutes. So I think to use the tools of AI is wonderful. But the part of me that's a little nervous about it is I don't know. Let me say it a different way. I think we should all double down on being human. It's whatever our unique stories are, our unique life experience, whatever we care about, instead of being anonymous and general. Let's be specific and be human, and that will help us succeed. What do you think about AI?
I'm an AI skeptic, but I'm not categorically against it. I mean, if I was my older brother's age when the internet started becoming a big thing in the mid '90s, I was actually only 5 years old and didn't really understand it. But I probably would have been skeptical of how it might have been opening up a Pandora's box. And AI kind of what my older brother might have thought of the internet back when it started to become a big thing. Where uh, excuse me one second here. Sorry, but I lost my train of thought. But
You
AI
were
can be a
contrasting
very
AI with the
helpful
internet.
yeah, AI can be a very helpful tool, like the internet has proven to be. But uh, AI can also be, in some ways, very destructive, like the internet has been in
Yeah,
some ways.
yeah. It's just a tool, so it depends on who is wielding the tool, whether it's for good or for evil. Yeah, true. And it's a
Aurora,
magnifier because it does so much so quickly.
Aurora, thank you for appearing on Apollo Papyrus. You were an amazing guest.
Oh, it was such a pleasure to connect with you today, Aaron. I really enjoyed the conversation. And maybe you'd like to follow me on Kickstarter too. And you can find out about that at magicmysteryandthemultiverse.com.
Aurora and her public relations manager, Madison Fairfield, were kind enough to send me paperback copies of Turd Words into Wealth, as well as Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse. I thank Aurora and Madison wholeheartedly for the generous gesture, and I look forward to reading both books. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write and read your passion. Bye for now. Remember to subscribe to the Apollo Papyrus YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@Apollo Papyrus and the Apollo Papyrus Substack newsletter at apollopapyrus.substack.com. Y'all can visit the Apollo Papyrus website at campaaronapollo.witsite.com/Apollo Papyrus and follow Apollo Papyrus on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at Apollo Papyrus. Copyright 2024, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.